If you remember scaring robot children, scaring 8-bit children, and scaring mountain goats, then you grew up playing Monsters Inc. But which one? Because there were a whopping 11 completely different games released, and in this video we're going to compare each of them. There is a lot to cover, so let's get straight into it. Now, normally I'd start with the flagship and then work my way down to the handheld games, but the sheer variety of Monsters Inc. games means that this time around we're gonna have to cover them in release order with some occasional diversions. With that being said, let's start with Monsters Inc. Scream Team, originally released for the PlayStation 1 and PC to coincide with the release of the movie in early November of 2001. And fun fact, this game was actually known as Scare Island in Europe and on PC for some reason. Now, despite being a movie tie-in, Scream Team actually has nothing to do with the film's plot. In fact, it's somewhat of a prequel, which sees Sully and Mike do training on Scare Island.
While you are here, the two of you will work together to complete a total of 15 trials. That's right, 15 trials. If you can complete them all successfully, you will earn yourself a spot on the scare floor.
The game starts off with this tutorial section narrated by Roz.
Welcome to the Monster Orientation. Here you will learn all you need to know to become a top scarer at Monsters Incorporated.
And every time you complete a task, you hear one of these.
Amazing. Now for attacking. Not that we encourage that at Monsters Inc.
I bloody hope not, you're dealing with kids. Well, technically not. This being a training location, the kids have been replaced with these robots, which you have to scare. Ah yes, look, it's trying to emulate one of those turn-of-the-century breakdancing children. Something is very familiar about these crates. And the way you spin and slam... That's right, this game borrows heavily from PlayStation 1 platformers of the time like Crash and Spyro in both gameplay and structure. There are a total of 3 different worlds with 4 levels each. The levels are filled with robot children which you have to scare. Now, collecting these scare canisters will give you the energy which you'll need to scare depending on the color of the robot. The more robotic children you scare, the better grade you will end up getting. You can play as either Sully or Mike, it doesn't really matter which one you use to clear the level, but most of the people I talk to who play this game growing up seem to have preferred Mike because he's a lot lighter and controls like a rubber ball. Okay, let's quickly cover all of the levels. The urban world starts with a playground level filled with rogue toy trains and spinning tops. That's right, f*** you and your sandcastle, you Skynet abomination. We've also got the downtown level. You see, it was a different time back then, a safer time where kids could play in the sewers alone at night. And I must say, Mike has some interesting scare techniques. Is he trying to flex? There's also the fishing dock. Hey, that's not a child. I just got assaulted by a Roblox man. And look, he's indestructible. And the final urban level is the marketplace, which is exclusively Asian for some reason. The Arctic world has a Sugar Shack level where you get assaulted by violent snowmen. Plus, this level borrows the ball bounce mechanic from Sonic Adventure. Now, the Sugar Shack itself is filled with kamikaze alarm clocks that you have to sneak past. Look, they're like the guards from Metal Gear.
What was that noise?
We've also got the ski lift level with the cutest, most vicious penguins in the world, plus you get to ride down the hill on the sleigh. This is followed by the iceberg level, which also borrows the speed ramps from Sonic Adventure. And finally, we have the hot springs level, and as we all know, young children love to spend time in Arctic climates. And finally, we have the desert world with the Sphinx and the Oasis level, along with the pyramid and tomb levels. At this point, the game introduces a few basic puzzles and tries to diversify the platforming a bit. And it definitely worked on me when I was a kid because these later sections took forever to complete. I also didn't have a PlayStation 1 memory card at the time, so I had to speedrun the hell out of this game every day after school. Now, each of the 3 sections ends with a race against Randall. Mike will race in his natural ball form. Meanwhile, Sully just raw dogs it, scooting for 2 miles down an icy mountain on his ass. Ugh. Also, who remembers the sheer outrage at seeing Randall cheat? And that's pretty much it. Once you scare enough robot children, Sully and Mike get to graduate. Scream Team / Scare Island was a simple game but incredibly fun, with a good amount of replayability as it encouraged you to collect all the items and trinkets. This seems to be many people's first ever game, or at least one of their earlier gaming experiences, which resulted in Scream Team holding a special place in many of our memories. But there was also another lesser known version of this game. You see, in February of 2002, Disney Interactive would release a PlayStation 2 version of this game, but only in Europe. And I've always been fascinated by this version because gameplay-wise, it's almost identical to the PS1 game, down to the point where you still have to use the shoulder buttons to move the camera. However, visually, it's had a complete overhaul from character models to textures and even lighting. Here is a back-to-back comparison of both versions. Okay, moving on, released around the same time as the original version of Scream Team, we also had two Game Boy games simply titled Monsters Inc. First up, we have the Game Boy Color version. Understandably, this game has a more traditional animated art style. Just look at Mike's creepy eyeball, always blinking. So this is a 2D platformer which actually kind of follows the plot of the movie. The first level is set in Sully's apartment, followed by a level where Sully has to go inside the doors and scare some kids. And Mike seems to have picked all the doors leading to billionaire offspring because these kids' rooms are absolutely massive, and they're filled with possessed toys that try to kill you, and each level ends with a child which you have to scare. Oh no, don't kill me, I'm rich! And fun fact, of all the games featured in this video, this is the only one where you actually get to scare real children. This is followed by 3 levels of Mike and Sully collecting paperwork. Now that's what I call fun. Mike is so light in this game that he can actually float for a bit and throw things, although I'm not sure I want to know what they are because he clearly has no pockets. Boo then gets out and scares the shit out of the town. Look at her jumping around like a tiny flea. We get a few levels on the streets. This time Sully has an unlimited supply of toys which he can throw down at the CDA inspectors. Also, remember that part in the movie where Sully did parkour across rooftops? Plus, some of these levels do allow you to swap between Sully and Mike at any time, which is a nice touch. We then get a couple of levels back at the factory. Wow, just look at all of these spikes. What poor working conditions. Is there like a Monsters Union rep that I can talk to about this? Eventually, Water News banishes the duo and we get this platforming level in the Himalayas, followed by a level where Sully has to slay downhill. The game ends with this impossibly hard door vault chase against Randall where you can't actually see where you're going because the camera moves too slow and Randall moves too fast. Half the time you've got to make a literal leap of faith and hope you land on something. This is followed by the final boss fight against Water News. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to win. I've got soft toys to throw and a small child on my back. Meanwhile, he's throwing literal exploding tanks filled with children's fear. Turns out you've got to wait for him to make a hole and then drop the canister on his head. Okay, that's it for the Game Boy Color version. Now let's move on to the Game Boy Advance. And this one actually follows the art style of the movie. Turns out Randall has destroyed Boo's door and scattered the pieces across a bunch of different gateways. The goal here is to find all the pieces and send her back home. And even though this looks like a generic platformer, it's actually a little bit of a Metroidvania game, as each level will be made up of a bunch of different connecting areas. The levels are also filled with CDA workers which Sully can either scare with his roar or use a tank of child laughter as a bazooka. Once you collect all the pieces in each section, you'll have to match them to the door in this mini puzzle. Look Boo, we've fixed your door, you can go back home now. Oh no, it's Randall. And he's turned one-dimensional. Oh bless her, she's such a nice assist character throwing candy and cans of dog food for Sully to eat. Okay, it's over Boo, you can now go home. Wait, what? Oh god damn it, not again. So yeah, Boo's door gets shredded about 5 times in this game, which results in Sully having to find the pieces across about 23 different locations. Luckily, these do have some variety as they implement settings from the movie, like the city, the changing rooms, and the door vault. After getting all the pieces together, you beat Randall one more time and are greeted to some wholesome deep-fried screenshots from the end of the movie. And what about Mike's role in this game? Well, he kind of does fuck all. Oh, and also every now and then Sully will come across a mountain of cocaine which he'll roll around in, causing him to trip so hard he ends up inside an SSX level. I think this was another game that many of us had growing up, probably because it came out only a few months after the GBA was released, so a lot of us got this one for Christmas. And I also appreciate the developers trying something slightly different instead of just doing yet another licensed 2D platformer. Okay, let's move on to the next game, which is a bit of an odd one. In March of 2002, Disney Interactive would release Monsters Inc. for the PlayStation 2. Not Scream Team, this one was just titled Monsters Inc. like the Game Boy games, but for some reason it came out 4 months after them. What's even more peculiar is that this game was only released in North America, whilst the PlayStation 2 version of Scream Team was only released in Europe. It seems like they wanted each region to only have one PS2 game to prevent them from eating into each other's sales. So, what's this game like? Well, straight away you can tell this one is next gen. Just look at all the fur on Sully's face. At least I hope that's fur. Unlike Scream Team, this one does have a dynamic camera mapped onto the right analog. Unfortunately, it is inverted, and sometimes gets lost behind. Genre-wise, this is another action platformer which has you controlling Sully, who can jump, roar, and do the Michael Jackson spin. He also controls a bit like a car from Burnout in this one. Look, he even has a boost button. Here I come! You run around levels, platforming, collecting all sorts of trinkets, flipping switches by roaring at them, doing fetch quests for NPCs, and partaking in some occasional sneaking. I don't know who's doing the voice of Sully in this one, but my boy sounds straight up drunk. Gangway! Out of my way! Woo, woo! The first 2 levels are used to introduce you to the gameplay. We've got the scare floor followed by the mailroom. Plus, this game actually has cutscenes from the movie in between each level. The 3rd level starts with Boo running away down some random alleyway.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, Mikey, but I've lost the kid again.
So yes, as expected, more parkour from Sully in this level. Also, who knew a toddler could be this adept at navigating rooftops? You also have the stealth meter in the left corner which alerts you to the presence of the CDA. The next level is set in Sully's apartment.
Is there anything else I should know?
Sully can also carry Boo on his back, and I do like the little touch of there being a power surge every time she laughs. The goal of this level is to find enough pieces of material to make the disguise for Boo. And so, Sully goes on a journey all around the apartment building, breaking into the homes of unsuspecting neighbors.
Hi, Sully. Where's that cool-looking Mike Wazowski?
Okay, what's happening next? Well, surprise, surprise, Boo has run away once again. And this time, Sully has to navigate the garbage disposal facility to find her. Now, the platforming itself isn't that bad, and Sully actually controls pretty well. What makes this level frustrating is that the camera will sometimes just decide to lock itself to a fixed perspective in some random sections. This is followed by a Himalayas level. Poor Yeti, he looks a bit depressed. This is a pretty linear platforming level which has you run ahead trying to avoid obstacles like giant snowballs, falling icicles, and these goats. Next up is the door vault level, and once again our heroes have lost Boo. Although it's happened so many times now, Mike and Sully don't really seem that fussed.
I have to save her.
And also, this is another game where Mike does absolutely fuck all. The door vault is definitely the trickiest level in the game. It's filled with escalators and narrow ramps that you have to navigate while avoiding the machines and the doors and the CDA. And all of this is made extra tricky when the camera decides to have a moment. The final level is a boss fight against Waternoose, which starts with this dramatic dialogue exchange.
I'm sorry, Mr. Waternoose, but I can't let you get away with it.
I'm so sorry to hear that, my boy.
Now, technically, this isn't really a boss fight. You just run and jump around the room, flipping switches until Waternoose's shield generator is destroyed. And that's it. So, how does this game compare to the PlayStation 2 version of Scream Team? Well, I think this game takes it in the visuals department. You can tell this one was programmed for the PlayStation 2 from the ground up, as opposed to being an upgrade of a last-gen game. But many of the levels in this game were weirdly dark for some reason. Gameplay-wise, both are platformers with an emphasis on collecting items. So it really depends if you'd prefer a more linear gameplay style that sticks closer to the movie's plot, or a 90s style 3D platformer which is split across different worlds and levels. Okay, with the PlayStation 2 game covered, let's move on to the whopping 7 interactive PC games which were released between 2001 and 2. We've got Scream Team Training, which is a collection of simple mini-games. The most memorable thing about this one is that Roz narrates everything you hover over.
Time cards, resumes, exit.
There were also a bunch of games released under the Rec Room moniker. We've got Bowling for Screams. I've got it. Oh, fuck. 8-Ball Chaos, which is a simple pool game. Monster Mania, which is a Donkey Kong clone where these ladies throw frying pans at you. Ah, what a cute little dog. Look, a baby. What's the worst thing that can happen? We then have Monster Tag, which is a seesaw minigame kind of thing. There was also a Pinball Panic PC game. And finally, we had Mike's Monstrous Adventure, a narrative-based 2D interactive adventure thing. And so there we have it, every version of Monsters. What's that? There was another game released in late 2002 for the Gamecube? Okay, why not? So this one is called Scream Arena, not to be confused with Scream Team. And Scream Arena is the only game to actually be set after the events of the movie. We start with a pre-rendered cutscene of an ad for Monsters Inc. now that they're trying to power the city through laughter. But while making the ad, both Sully and Mike end up getting hit by dodgeballs, which sends them into a manic state. That's right, this is a dodgeball game, because why not? We've got single and multiplayer modes of up to 4 players, and the goal is to knock out your opponent while filling the laugh canister. There are a total of 13 different characters, including monsters from the movie, the CDA agent, and Boo. There are also 7 levels, including the Simulation Room, the Apartment, Main Street, Monsters Inc. Lobby, Harryhausen, the Locker Room, and the Laugh Floor. The levels are small but charming and are filled with details from the movie. The differences between the characters is mostly cosmetic, but for some reason Boo looks like the Tasmanian devil when she runs. There are also different types of dodgeballs which have different effects, my favorite being the disco ball. Overall, it's a pretty simple dodgeball game. This one was definitely pumped out as a quick stocking stuffer for Christmas of 2002. And so there we have it, every Monsters Inc. game compared. And I'm just staggered by the sheer volume of games released. I think this is the most games I've ever covered for one title. As expected, when you have so many games in such a short interval, many of them aren't going to be great. But I am glad that we at least got the classic Scare Island Scream Team game and the Game Boy Advance game. But that's just my take. Please let me know your memories of the Monsters Inc. games in the comments below. Which was your favorite game, favorite version, and how many robot children did you annihilate? As always, thanks for watching. Please consider supporting me on Patreon, and a big thanks to my existing patrons. If you've enjoyed this video, then please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.